Hello there, my loves. I have to apologise. I did promise a review of The Space Engine by Christopher Priest today, but unfortunately last night I had a big migraine and my brain's a little scrambled today. So that's going to be next week. So today I just thought I'd show you a few paintings that I'm still working on and one that I've actually finished. But before we get to all of that goodness, I'm going to be doing my usual little ramble talking about various things. Timestamps down below if you want to cut that shit out. So, yes, as many of you know, I do suffer from migraines quite often. Increasingly, it's due to when I'm driving, I'll get them then. I think it's air pressure related or some such, I don't know. Anyway, last night it was for a very different reason. I was lying on my bed in the evening just for a quiet moment of contemplation, and what did I see above me on the ceiling but a bastard mosquito. I've got a really bad bite on my knee and I think that was the culprit. So then we waged a bit of war together, me and said mosquito. Now, because of my decrepit wrist, I can't even smack a mosquito to death for fear of damaging it. So what I tend to do is I've got a golf club. I've never used it before, for golf, but I do use it occasionally to smash the brains out of mosquitoes. I also had a misting thing, like a garden water mister. So my favourite technique is to give them a damn good blast of the old misting to slow them down somewhat and then bludgeon them with my putter. Unfortunately, I came up against an Arnold Schwarzenegger of a mosquito.
Son of a bitch. What's the matter? The CIA got you pushing too many pencils?
And it put up one hell of a fight. I gave it a damn good splashing with the mister, but it just kept going. And what it ended up doing was flying up into the inside of a lampshade, presumably to dry its wings off. Quite an intelligent one, this one. Anyway, I started prodding the putter up carefully, getting ready to give it a good smack. And I was staring at the light bulb, unfortunately, and bang! Migraine was triggered. So I never killed the damn things. It's probably still in there and I've probably been bitten elsewhere. Hopefully not on my privates. It appears to be okay at the moment, but there's always a risk. So there we are. Mosquito 1, John 0. So there we are. That's a bit of a fragile vessel at the moment. There's nothing more emasculating than a condition that renders you at the mercy of a mosquito. But there we are. Okay, so what do you think of the splendid light show behind me? It's a new addition to the channel. I've splashed out on the string of lights. £2.50 it cost me. No expense spared for this channel. In fact, it's actually remained in stock, if you will, from the closing down of Wilkinson, or Wilkos, as it's been rebranded over the last 20 years or so. So Wilkos, to any of you that aren't from the British Isles, is a kind of budget department store. So kind of hardware. I usually get my masking tape. You can get paper stationery, you can get cleaning products, deodorants, all that kind of shit, gardening stuff. And unfortunately, it's in administration. And so it's going to cease trading this month, or next month, I think. So they're selling their stock off cheap. So yeah, I got those. That's my reminder of the legacy of Wilkos. I also got the push pins. There's push pins there. So those lights are only held up by friction and the tension against those push pins, also from Wilkos. So yeah, I was quite pleased with that. Interestingly, just talk about Wilkos briefly. I remember first going into a Wilkos as a young man. I think it was the first one that came to Plymouth when I was living there in the city of Plymouth. And I thought it was quite a bleak place, to be honest. I thought it was a bit naff in here. Everything's a bit cheap and cheerful compared to the likes of Woolworths or Debenhams. So quite kind of... Woolworths may be slightly similar. They all did different things. Woolworths had more toys and things. Debenhams was more of a clothes and, a traditional department store. Both of those have died the same way that Wilkos is doing now, unfortunately. The one thing I would say is that all of these things are dying a slow death. Well, they're not dying a slow death, they're all being killed off. And it's strange that I'm now lamenting the passing of Wilkos that has now become quite dear to me, because I suppose that's the whole problem. It wasn't run very well, and so it wasn't making enough of a profit, so it had to die. But at the same time, they catered for many niche little things. So occasionally I'd go in there for, say, framing wire or something like that. They couldn't be making any money on that, but they still provided it as a courtesy to those who wished to partake of those things. This kind of shit's going by the way now. I mean, it's all going online, of course, but it's interesting for something that I initially didn't like or thought was a bit naff to now be thinking, Christ, that's a shame that's going. I mean, it says a lot that it's come to that, doesn't it? I mean, anyway, on a side note, Debenhams, that died. It's online now, apparently. It's a funny thing. I was talking to a chap, a friend of mine. We studied art together. He was from Texas. And one day he said to me, "What's with that store Debenhams?" I loved the way he pronounced Debenhams. But there we are. That's the sidetrack. Anyway, Wilkos is dying, and it's a bloody shame. Last weekend, was it this weekend gone? It was. Yeah, me and Vanessa went swimming in the sea for the last time this year. So it was a kind of resurgence of the summer. I mean, our summer here was terrible. July and August, absolute shambles. But as often happens over here, in September we have the Indian summer, where it becomes nice again. And it was absolutely lovely last Saturday. So we hopped we got a train actually, down to Dawlish Warren and had a lovely time reading on the beach and swimming. The water was wonderfully warm. I mean, this is global warming, I'm sure, responsible for this, but it was unbelievable. Normally, you've got to inch your way into the British waters very, very slowly, or else do yourself a mischief, especially around the genital area. But this was an absolute breeze. And as we were walking back towards the beach, the shallower waters, it was like a tepid bathwater. It was absolutely lovely. The only thing that put me off was a sheen of what looked like oil all over the water. Now, this is something that's been in the local news and national news lately about sewerage ending up into our seas, our lovely coastal areas. So, but I haven't been ill after that, so hopefully it wasn't anything too malicious. There was a lot of motorboats gambling around, so it's probably one of those squirting off a bit of oil here and there. But we're none the worse for it. Just bloody lovely. The only thing I would say is the sea was slightly calm. I prefer it when it's got a nice bit of roll to it, a nice bit of swell. I love just floating there and feeling the waves, riding the waves. Oh, it's absolutely lovely. But anyway, good time was had by us both. And then we took a little bimble up to a nearby pub that we found. There's always a pub somewhere. This one was called the Mount Pleasant, I think. Lovely view down across the water. And we had a couple of ciders in there. Very old-fashioned. It was an inn, I think. I think you can stay there. But there we are. Old-fashioned. I like old-fashioned places. And the average age of the people all sitting in the beer garden were my age or higher, which was also quite pleasant. No bastard children running around. I'm a bastard, aren't I? Anyway, moving on. What else? The only other thing is I've been having running battles with people online lately. I always do this. I can't help myself. But there's this debate that's ongoing at the moment about AI infringement in the arts. So in image generation and even in creating text, writing books, things like that. I'm completely against it personally. But at the same time, I'm aware that this is the Pandora's box has been opened and we're not going to be able to put all this back in again. The problem is really, in terms of the image generation, is that it's made possible by feeding on a huge data set of artwork from millions of artists that never gave their consent and completely bypassing copyright law to do so. And now you've got people that have never even lifted up a pencil, able to create fantastic art by using this, which is kind of taking little pieces of different images from different artists and putting them into new forms. In a sense, I mean, this is completely subverting copyright. I mean, it's not copying artists directly, but it's copying their styles. So it's called prompting. Instead of painting, you're writing what you want. So paint me a picture, with this, and then people are actually referencing directly artist names that they want to emulate, and then creating images that were never created by said artist, but look like it was done by them in a parallel universe. Now, I can see a lot of fun could be had by this technology, and it's quite an exciting technology in its own right. But at the same time, we've got people that are exploiting it, creating these images and then trying to sell them on the same footing as traditional artists. Now, you've got someone that's got no experience of art whatsoever, but they know what they like, they know what looks nice, and they're able to run out hundreds of images in the time it would take an artist to do just one. So there's not a level footing, and there's a lot of animosity on both sides. And occasionally I get into the debate, and it doesn't always go very well. But anyway, there we are. That's one of my other hobbies at the moment. What fun. I mean, the same kind of thing's going with self-publishing, people just running off books really quickly. And there also another naughty thing people are doing is that they're creating AI-generated books that are not pretending to be another author, say, I don't know, Stephen King, but they're using Stephen King as a name because you can't copyright someone's name, and they're feeding off customers that are just quickly buying a book, assuming it's by Stephen King. So that's another naughty thing. I don't see how we're going to get around these problems. And that's not even to speak about the academic world, in university, people running off fake essays and all the rest of it. It's an absolute shambles. If you have your own points to offer, please do so, and we can have an argument down below. Only joking. I'm done with it. It doesn't get you anywhere. I think the main gist of the problem is that a lot of this technology is fully embraced by much younger people. I'm not having a go at younger people here. There's nothing wrong with it. The fact is that the people that are wholeheartedly embracing this and selling these AI generated images have no conception of what it's like for these artists that are getting so angry, that have spent decades honing their craft, that have created this work for the grist for this AI mill. They don't give a damn about that and the fact that these people's careers could be getting destroyed. They just say, well, just embrace AI, you'll get left behind else. But painting, creating something from scratch, more or less, I mean, you're being influenced by other things, and someone that's just, I want a picture of this, boom, yeah. Fucking hell, I made that. That's the difference. Terrible times. We're definitely heading towards a very bleak dystopian future. Anyway, there we are. That's my opinion, but I'm getting to be an old, grumpy old man, so you can expect that kind of thing from me. Okay, so shall we get to it? Yeah, let's get to it. So before I show any of my paintings, look at this thing I bought. So I went to a used furniture place the other day, and I got this bloody nice frame. I think it was about a £5. I mean, I'm going to have to jettison this piece of shit here behind. I mean, it's quite a nice shade of purple, and it quite complements the nice warm brown of the frame nicely, but it's a shit image, and I'm going to fuck it off. So what do you think I should put in there? I love looking at an empty frame and just imagining something to put in it. So that's what I'm going to do with this one. It's quite long and thin. One could imagine a reclining nude lady there, or perhaps a gigantic penis. I haven't decided yet, so messages down below if there's something you would like me to try. I may or may not do that. But anyway, there we are. Okay, so the first two, I've only got 3 other ones to show you. One's finished and maybe 2 are finished. So the first one here, this is one I've shown you last time. It is this isometric kind of thing, science fiction-y kind of thingamajog. So the only thing I did, as I suggested I might do before, is tone down this green. So if I bring it up, you'll see what I've done. I've just knocked down the vibrancy of it a bit because it was competing too much with the structure above it, the purple mottled surface of the structure, and I think it worked quite nicely. I knocked it back, by the way, by doing a very thin glaze. So I used a dark colour, wiped it over quite thin, and then took as much off as I could, and it just knocked it back just a little bit. Okay, so the other one, this is one I've shown you before, the one that I didn't have much hope for. Well, I'll show you first. This is what it was before. I'd wasted hours and hours on this, and I just thought it was a lost cause, and I was pretty close to putting a fist through it. But I decided to put these highlights on using a very, very light pink. So referencing this pink, and I made it so light that it's more or less white. And I used it to pick out all the details of these structures here behind these kind of forceps-like things. And I think it works nicely. It pops. And I did a glaze of this kind of purple over the pink just to differentiate this area from this vaginal opening in the middle. I call it a vagina, but it's not. I don't know what it's going to be. I might pop in something in the very centre, perhaps a landscape, an alien city or something of the like. I'm not quite sure what to do with that yet. We shall see. So, right, the last one is the Maypole one that I showed very fleetingly on a recent drunken live stream where I forgot that I had to censor it. So I will try to censor it today. If I remember to edit it, but I've finished it, and I've also popped it in its antique frame, and it looks rather splendid, I think. So here we are. Here it is, quite big, and it's a tricky one for me to hold up because of my bloody wrist, but there we are. Here we go. So isn't that wonderful, that frame? I really love it. The colour, it's not like really gilt golden. I hate that. It's more subdued, more wood, like a golden wood colour. I do like a bit of wood, as you all know. So there we are. That's what it looks like in the frame. What I'm going to do now, so I've put this down. Oh, you swine. Incidentally, I should say that it's not for sale. This was an experiment just to see what I could do when I took my time and, well, it took my time basically. So there we are. That's that. What I'm going to do now is very briefly go through the process of how I painted it, if you don't mind. If you want to skip this, then just stop it now. I would. But anyway, let's have a look here. I've got to switch over to something else. All right, here we go, chaps. So it began life initially as a Photoshop image. So basically, I created a collage. So I got various free image sources and cut them all out and layered it in a composition that I found pleasing. So I had this idea that this young woman would be hiding behind a wall and behind her would be a maypole. So for the first time, I've never really worked like this before. I decided to create it all on Photoshop by using these cutouts. So on this image here, you can roughly make out everything. I'm sorry, I haven't got a clear image of that. I thought I had, but you can see to the left of the canvas, that piece of paper with the pencil rubbing on it. So that's an old fashioned way of transferring images. So you rub a load of graphite on the outside of it, and then on the other side of it, you draw along the lines and it gets transferred onto your canvas. The canvas is this kind of terracotta kind of colour. I often start with this basic ground because it works really nice with flesh tones. You get a kind of glow that comes through them. Okay, so the next one. So unfortunately, I forgot to take a photograph with just the sky, but here we are. I painted the sky and the darkest parts of the wall. So that's something I like to do. You start with the very darkest bits, and then you work up to the lights. The sky I did in one go. It's really nice. I think it was cobalt blue. Was it cobalt or phthalo? I think it's phthalo blue. A very simple gradient down to a slightly lighter tone, and a few wispy clouds that you do wet on wet. It's slightly tricky because I was having to paint around the drawing. Occasionally I like to employ masks, so I do this very laborious process of using masking tape and the like. And then you can just go hell for leather and not worry about going over lines. But I decided not to bother this time because it was just going to be too laborious. Okay, so the next one, so you can see I've put the detail of the, look at these bastard things. No, it doesn't matter. You can't see that. Okay, so I've got the detail over the stonework here. This piece of stonework, I don't know where I got it from, but it was really low quality. I've kind of riffed over it, if you will. But that's the texture I initially imparted into the stonework, which I later went over. So that's just a baseline of stone, basically. And the next one, so here you can see that I've popped in the cloud itself. I was listening, because I like listening to films as I'm painting. I was listening to Erin Brockovich, the film Erin Brockovich, whilst I painted that. Whenever I look at that cloud, I think of Julia Roberts in that film. It was quite pleasant to paint this, but it was also quite challenging. Made all the more difficult because of the ribbons of the Maypole getting in the bastard way. But yeah, we got there in the end. Okay, the next thing I did was blocked in a dark undercoat of green for the trees and the lower grass area. Again, it's good to start with a darker colour first, and then you can get the highlights on top of it. Some people work wet on wet in this way, but I decided to let those layers dry so I could get more detail in the foliage thereafter. So in this image you can see that I've popped in all the leaves of those trees in the background there. So for these trees, these were free image assets, PNG files, so they already had a transparency, various different types of tree, and I just picked the ones I wanted and then arranged them as I wanted behind the figure in as natural a way as I could muster. So there we are, that's that. I've also popped in the dress of the young lady there, along with the shadow of under the arm. Again, I'm going for the darker tones, although I have used some highlights as well. And then later I would go over that with more detail. Okay, so then comes the flesh tone. So I'm going to have to, I've probably censored this, but I painted this all in one day. So the feet, legs and various other regions there were painted in one session, around 4 hours, 4 or 5 hours, something like that. And then in the evening, she was still missing her face and it was bugging me. I thought, just do it. I find faces so much harder than the bodies. So I decided to do that. That took another 3 hours perhaps, again in one sitting. And again, with these kind of body work, if you will, I do all of that wet on wet, so I don't bother layering up so much. I do various base layers and then I paint directly over them with lighter tones, again working from dark to light to lightest, and then at the end I can pop in the very darkest bits and the very lightest bits once it's dried. You can see that I've put in the detail of the dress at this point as well, but the grass hasn't been touched. But now it has. So here, for the final session, I popped in all of these various plant life in all the cracks of the stonework. You can see a lot of the detail initially imparted into the stonework has been lost because I've done various glazes over the top. A kind of a green one to show that it's slightly mossy perhaps. I've also popped in this dark shadow to the side of the figure opposite to the direction the light's coming from. I had to do that in a separate session and let that dry. And then beneath that there's a plant that a flowering plant, or weed really, that appears outside my door there. So I took a photograph of that and stuck it in the painting. In front of that then is just a kind of arbitrary attempt at grass. So I think I used 3 different shades of green and used a rigger, which is a very long bristled brush that you can do nice curvy shapes with, even if you've got a decrepit wrist like mine and you can't really move it that much. So yeah, it created some nice lines there. So about 3 different layers of varying sizes, and then just for a final little detail, I put some tiny little shadows on the blades of grass that are projecting onto this young woman's flesh. So there we are in a nutshell. What do you think of that painting? Do you like it? Do you think it's obscene and I shouldn't have painted it? That is a fair comment. I mean, it's I suppose it's similar to like a pin-up, a slightly more crude pin-up, I suppose. Normally that region that I've been censoring wouldn't be shown, but I thought to hell with it. No one else is going to have it, no one's going to see it, so I'll just do it the way I want to. Again, I think I said about this on the live stream, this is an attempt at emulating one of my favourite artists, Kit Williams. Absolutely stunning work. I've got nowhere near his ability there, or his kind of poetic or symbolic style that he uses, but it's an attempt, and it's as good as I can do at the moment. But I hope to get better. I still hope to get better, but I also hope that my wrist doesn't get any worse, because if it does, then I won't be able to paint anymore. But there we are. Let's leave it there for now. Next week I will definitely be back with a review. I've read, aside from the Space Engine, I've read another 3 books, which I may or may not review as we go along. If I don't, then I'll do a mini review at the end of the year when I do a roundup of all the books I've read. So yeah, it will be counted at some point. I better leave it there because it's longer than it's usually is, so I'll leave it there. Yes. Okay, cheerio, have a lovely day, and I'll see you next week. And thank you if you've subscribed recently. I've got a few trickled in this week for unknown reasons. It's completely random. Anyway, thank you and goodbye. Cheerio.